Good afternoon. My name is David Reuben. I'm a background investigator who's been working for the San José Fire Department for over 20 years. And if you are listening to this, you are either a potential candidate or a current candidate to be a recruit firefighter. This lecture is aimed at helping you make it through the process through your background investigation. This is a very competitive process, as you all know, and you should congratulate yourself for getting to this stage of the recruitment. What we're going to do this afternoon is go through the different steps that you need to take to increase your chances for making it through a successful background investigation. We're going to go through some documents, and then we're going to go through what is called the personal history statement, which is a multi-page document in which you will be detailing all aspects of your life, background, going back to your childhood. To start, what I would like to do is tell you that the first thing you're going to do when you are in this process is get a list of documents that you will need to prepare ahead of time before your intake interview. Very important. You do not want to have a shortage of your documents before your intake. That will hurt your interview and hurt your chances. There are basically a series of documents that I will read quickly into the record that you need to provide. There is a notarized authorization and release for all candidates. Some of you may not know what a notary is. A notary is basically a process where you go to a post office, a real estate office, an attorney's office. You could look it up on Google, who notaries are. Public offices have it. And you will bring in a document for your release that you will sign and fill out in front of the notary. A mistake commonly made is that people sign it before. You can't do that because the notary is basically looking at your identification to make sure you are the person that you're representing yourself to be. So that is the first step you're going to be doing, and a background investigation cannot really be initiated until your release has been notarized and filled out and ready to be provided to your background investigator. Personal history statement. Personal history statement ranges from 24 to 26 pages usually, and we'll be going through that in detail for all the categories in a few moments. The thing about that is every category has to be filled out. If it is not applicable, there is a checkbox that says not applicable. If you do not check that off, we do not know if you missed it or not. So if somebody in the process has a deceased parent, for instance, don't leave it blank, you will write deceased. And the same applies to jobs, to education. If there is a difference in how you existed in that format earlier, but now the job no longer exists, or the institution no longer exists, you will have to note that. So that, again, it will take you quite some time to fill out a personal history statement. You cannot do it overnight. You cannot do it in 1 hour. You have to be prepared to take days to do your research, to get family members or significant others or friends to help you fill in the information. One critical element of this is to make sure you have checked and give us good contact information. If you have an old phone book and you have a number from 10 years ago, we expect you to check on that to make sure it is accurate. Your background investigator will not be doing that, and it'll be problematic if they keep having disconnected information. Some more documents. Social media addendum. You will list all of your social media, past and present, and how to contact those sites. If it's something you used to have but don't have any longer, that's fine. You give the information anyway. Do not skip any of your sites. And you will need to, again, have us know how to get into those sites. The next documents we're going to read through are just documents you will be showing originals during your background interview, but you will make copies for your background investigator. Your birth certificate. Make sure you find your birth certificate Make a copy of it, bring your original to your background interview. Certifications. All your training, certifications, the most important for us is EMT and paramedic. If you are an EMT or a paramedic, bring in your certs that indicate that to us and make copies, of course, of those documents. Transcripts, high school and or college. We do not want diplomas. We want transcripts, and they are official transcripts, which you will obtain from an institution. They are done two different ways. One way is through an on-site secure address called Parchment. Parchment will send a secure link to your background investigator so they can look at the transcript. The other way is to, of course, have a sealed copy provided to your background investigator. Sealed. If you have it sent to you, do not open it. You bring it to your background interview. If it's sent directly to the background investigator, they will open it. If it's not sealed, it is not official, it cannot be accepted. So that, again, is something you're going to have to prepare ahead of time. Some institutions, if they're out of state or closed for holidays, may take some time. So you're going to have to, again, do that early in the process. Social Security card and driver's license. Copies and originals. Originals shown, copies will be provided. Make sure your driver's license is current. Do not provide an old driver's license. Check your driver's license. Hopefully you are on top of that situation and you will find it did not expire 3 months ago. It has to be current. You have to be a current legal driver. 3-year DMV history. 3 years is all DMV will provide. You could do it online. You could do it at DMV. Either way, get the DMV history, provide it to your background investigator. Current auto insurance policy and vehicle registration if you own a vehicle. If it's in your parents' name, you'll have a card that shows it's in your parents' name, and that's fine. You could provide that. Insurance may be in your parents' name or your significant other's name. That is also fine. You need to provide a copy of that. Marriage license, dissolution of marriage. If you are married, copy of your marriage license. If you are divorced, a copy of your dissolution. You may have to research that. It may have been out of state, it may be out of the area. You'll have to provide that. The marriage license will be your current marriage license. We don't need the old marriage license. If you're divorced, we need the dissolution papers and only your current marriage license. Proof of selective service and DD-214. If you were in the military, you will provide a copy of your DD-214. You all will know what that is if you were in the military. If you were not in the military, you were still required to selective service registration, which you did when you turned 18 years old. You may forget that, but it's there. You will go online and get a copy of that registration and provide it to your background interview. Naturalization papers, if you're a naturalized citizen, you need to provide that. You can provide the original to show and a copy for our files. Neighbors, we want a copy of list of all your neighbors that you know. Doesn't help us to have a neighbor who doesn't know you, but if you have any neighbors across the street, next door, past neighbors would help if it's something relatively recent. That can only help you. Current neighbors, of course, would be mandatory. Candidates frequently maybe live on a farm or on a ranch and not have any neighbors that are close by. They do not know their neighbors. If you do not, you need to provide a narrative explaining that scenario. Now, tattoos. If you have tattoos, you will provide copies of the pictures and descriptions of the tattoos and where they are on your body. Obviously, appropriate tattoos. We do not want an inappropriate tattoo photo if it's in a place that may be in a private part of your body, but you can still describe that for the background investigator. So you will have a copy of, if you have 20 tattoos, you will have 20 pictures of tattoos. If you have no tattoos, that'll be not applicable. You need to answer the questions. You will also have a picture taken of yourself when you come to the background interview. If for some reason you have done a Zoom interview, you will provide a background photograph of yourself, a selfie as they call it, and provide that to our email. That very quickly goes through all of the documents you'll be providing. Again, some of these you may have readily available, some you may not, some you may have with your parents, or they may be located in some safety deposit box. You need to do your research. This is a time-consuming process. Your background investigator will be looking for thoroughness and detail. You do not want to have a problem or something comes out later that you should have provided. When you sit down for that background interview, again, you don't want to say, I couldn't find it, and I'll provide it at a later date. You want to come to your interview with those documents. To clarify one point, when you show up for your background interview, you really required mandatory to have 3 documents: the personal history statement, filled out in detail, the notarized release, done appropriately, and the social media sites, all filled out. Those are mandatory presentations for your background interview. If you can't find your marriage license, you can provide it when you can, in a reasonable period of time, we'd expect. If you can't find, the transcripts are going to take a while, potentially. So don't worry about scheduling your interview because you don't have everything all lined up. Have those 3 items mandatory. The others, if you can't find them, provide in a reasonable period of time. So we're going to go over the personal history statement page by page. The first page is your instruction page. On that page, all you have to do is read your instructions, sign it, and date it. Don't forget to do that. That is frequently forgot. The corner of that page, in the right-hand lower corner, and every subsequent page has a little line to be initialed. That means you have read thoroughly that page and have completed it to your satisfaction. And that will be for every single page. We now move forward to the actual personal history statement. The personnel section, include your name, obviously. You may have changed your name for whatever reason. You need to have all your names, your former name, your current name. Nicknames are not really necessary. If your mom called you Skippy, that probably is not something we really care about. Now, if everybody in your job calls you Skippy and they only know you as Skippy, then you should probably say that or detail that in your background interview. So all names you are known by. And again, if you have changed your name, it's critical you use all the names you have used. And as we go through this document, if you do not have enough room on a given section or page, you will make a separate page, refer to that section, and put the additional information that you could not fit on the document. Okay. Address has to be your current address, obviously. If it's a post office box, we also want a physical address. If you're born outside the U.S., where that was, driver's license, birthplace, all very self-explanatory. All these categories have to be filled out. Good phone numbers. Cell number is usually the best way to contact you. We would expect that it's accurate so your background investigator could get hold of you and there's no delay in the process. Relatives and references. Here we referred to earlier, mother, father, siblings. You may have a stepmother, a stepfather. Somebody may be deceased. You will refer to that as deceased. If it's not applicable, you could just say, check the not applicable and write deceased. Don't just say not applicable. Everybody had a mother or a father at some point. If you didn't know them since birth, you may want to just write that, not known since birth, or deceased at birth, or whatever. Stepfather, stepmother, all applicable, then you fill it in. On the next page, you're going to list your spouse, registered domestic partner, significant other, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. Please signify what they are. Circle that. If we do not see girlfriend circled, are we going to assume that's your wife? If we do not see significant other circled, then we can assume it's your husband or wife. Again, circle the correct category that applies with good contact information. This is obviously a very important person in your life. We'd expect the information to be accurate. Father-in-law, mother-in-law, if it applies or not applicable. The category towards the bottom of the page is very important. Former spouse, domestic partner, significant other, girlfriends, boyfriends. You're going to have to do your research. Some of these individuals may not want to be in contact with you, or you may not want to be in contact with them. You'll have to do your research as best you can. Let that be our problem if they don't want to talk to us. You will provide the information. Don't tell me you cannot find it. You have it somewhere. Do your research. And if you had 10 boyfriends or girlfriends, we want as many as you can get. Don't give me one when you had, and again, it's serious relationship. If you dated somebody for 2 weeks, probably not a major concern here. You lived with somebody, resided with them, or you dated them for what a rational person would say a significant period of time, that we want detailed. And again, I can't stress enough, good contact information. And if you need to explain about the relationship because it was problematic, restraining order, some kind of issue, you could explain it during your background interview. You could also supplement that by a narrative if you want to put it with the background packet. Brothers and sisters, list them, all of them. And if you have more than there are 4 spaces, if you have more, list them in the back in a separate piece of paper or on an addendum of some kind, and their contact information. If you don't know where they are, you could say, don't know where they are, unknown. But you need to, again, detail that again. All these things will be gone over with your background investigator during your intake interview. So again, these are things you want to be prepped on so you're not hemming and hawing when you're asked those questions. Children, self-explanatory. Again, your children's name and their ages and their contact information. If they're living with you or living with an ex, or they're adults living outside the home, detail that in the package. Very important page, the next one, which is your relatives and references. And I want to point out here, you will only be putting names down in this packet one time. You can't use the same person as your mother and use mom as a reference and use mom as your boss, even if those are all technically applicable. You're going to list her once. Pick the spot, probably under mom would be my guess. But a friend, for instance, is either going to be under a reference or maybe connected to a job. Don't list them twice. We don't want to see the same names over and over again. I also don't want to hear that you cannot fill, there are 6 lines for references. You can provide more, that's fine. We don't want to hear you say, I couldn't come up with more than 3. I'm sure you have coaches, ministers, babysitters, whatever category, mentors, the firefighter down the street. You can fill this in, and more the merrier. And again, of course, good contact information. But again, the relatives, employers, housemates are probably listed somewhere else. Don't list them here. If you list them here, you can't list them there. Education. All right, this is important. Are you an EMT or a paramedic? And you will check that off when you were first certified. You will be providing those certifications, as we mentioned earlier. High school diploma may be checked off, GED, high school proficiency certification. Whatever is applicable, you will check off. The dates for EMT and paramedic are important, and they will be included towards the bottom where you're listing trade, vocational, or business schools, institutes attended. Where you got your EMT, where you got your paramedic. If that's at a school you've already listed under colleges or universities or high schools, that's fine. You could repeat that there because we don't know where you got your EMT or your paramedic. Especially important if it's out of state or out of the area. We want to know the contact information for those institutions. Firefighter 1, Firefighter 2 academies. Only helps you. Make sure you put it in there. Too many times we've had to say, have you had Firefighter 1 or Firefighter 2? And they say, well, yes. Well, it's not listed. If it's not listed, as far as I'm concerned, you didn't do it. Residence, where you currently live. You will tell your background investigator if you're moving or going to be moving a month, but where you're currently living is what we want. If you're going to be moving a month and you know the address, you'll provide both addresses. If you're living with your parents, you're living with your parents. That's fine. You will list that. Former addresses could be maybe just your parents, maybe with your girlfriend, you lived in an apartment or in a house. Maybe you lived with a bunch of roommates. List all your former addresses. You'll have to do your research on this. If you were in the military, no, I don't expect you to list every single base you were assigned to and all your overseas assignments. But if it's relevant, you live there for an extended period of time, then you will include that. There's a lot of pages for your former addresses, so there's no excuse not to put those in there. And you could even write in or supplement it with why you moved. It says reason for moving, so it could be you just moved to a bigger location, you got a new job, you got divorced, whatever it might be. Again, make sure everything is filled out. Housemates and roommates, you may not have any. You may have just be living with your parents your whole life, or parents and then significant other possibly. So again, that's something you've got to clarify so your background investigator understands that. If you lived in a dormitory, I do not expect to have 400 names listed. Your roommates in college would be fine. Your roommates in an apartment would be fine. In the military, I don't want the whole platoon. That is not necessary. If you lived off base with a couple of fellows or women, that's fine. Provide those names. And again, accurate contact information. Next section, experience and employment. Again, very critical. You have to do your research. You're starting, and this whole section will be filled out from most recent to further away. So your current job will be in your first spot. We expect that to be accurate. It's your current job. The direct phone number of your supervisor. We'd rather have their direct number. We'd rather not have the corporate number or HR. We want their direct number so we can talk to your supervisor directly and not have a problem of communication. A lot of candidates make the mistake on their job title of writing their supervisor's job title. No, it's your job title. If you're the warehouseman, then it's a warehouseman. I don't want you to say foreman if that's not what you were. If you were the foreman, of course, it's applicable. Very important here to highlight if it's a full-time, a part-time, a temp job, a self-employed, or a volunteer job. Put your volunteer work in. That only helps you, especially if it's something relevant to the fire service or public safety. And you could detail it more on a subsequent piece of paper if you need to, or discuss it at your background interview. The square for your current job will read, would there be a problem if we contact your current employer, yes or no? Very simple. If there's not a problem, it's an obvious no problem. If you have a new job and you're worried they're going to fire you if they find out you are applying to be a firefighter, you can write yes, discuss it with your background investigator, and we will make arrangements on how and when to contact that supervisor so it does not damage your reputation at that current job. At some point, if you become a viable candidate, they will have to be contacted and you'll have to cross that bridge. But we are willing to honor the fact that you don't want it detailed now because they will be upset with you on the job because it's a current job, or you just are worried at how you'll be treated at that job. But you will have room for coworkers or maybe other former bosses at that job that you could provide. So take your time. Again, you have no excuse not to have current information that's accurate. Now, you may also have 3 or 4 current jobs. I should detail that. You may be an EMT, you may be a volunteer somewhere, you may be working at Walmart part-time. If you have 3 or 4 current jobs, that's fine. You'll put those all in. And you'll say it's current, of course, and when you started it and it's current. But then you will get to your former jobs. And that means all your former jobs. If you were the fry boy at McDonald's when you were 18, I want to see it on the paper. If you don't have enough room in this document for all of your jobs, then add supplemental pages. Some of you candidates may have had quite a few jobs, and that's fine. List them all. I can remember all my jobs, and I am older than all of you. So I would expect you guys to remember all of your jobs. Talk to mom, talk to wife or husband, talk to significant other to help you stir your memory of that job. Might have been a summer job. You were a lifeguard when you were in high school or college. We want to see all those things, and we want to get to contact people as best you can. Or reasonable. If you had a job 20 years ago and you didn't have a clue about any of the contact information, you could explain that. But do the best job you can. If you had a job for a significant period of time, which means basically anything a year plus, you should have some contact information and what that job was all about. If you're in the military, that will also be included in one of the sections. I want to point out that you will be putting, if you are a paramedic, your preceptor's name and contact information, even if it was an old name from years ago. Everybody knows who their preceptor was and their contact information. That needs to be included. If you were in an academy for a period of time, another fire academy, that will be in a space too, and you will have who the supervisor maybe of a cadre was, a captain, whomever would be the applicable or appropriate individual. Again, if you don't put those things down, we cannot assume you were in an academy or that you had a preceptor that we can talk to. This only helps you. It does not help you if you leave that out. You will also notice spaces in between for student, between jobs, leave of absence, travel, or other. Whatever's applicable, check that space off. You're a student between the jobs, you were unemployed. I want to know you weren't in state prison for that period of time. As we get to the end of the employment section, and again, these will all be gone over during your background interview, so make sure the information is accurate. Have you ever been disciplined at work? That could be anything. A written warning, obviously a suspension or a reprimand, a counseling, a reduction of pay, a reassignment, a demotion. Obviously, we want to know all the details, which you may need to supplement on another sheet of paper. Just explain it. Doesn't necessarily hurt you. And by the way, I want to point out, and we're going to get to some other sections where it's more applicable, we have a phrase called time and distance. If you did something that you are ashamed of or a mistake in your life, we can all say that. But time and distance is critical. How long ago it was and what it was, that's what we'll discuss. If it was recent, so be it, but you have to discuss it. If you don't mention it and we find it, there's a discrepancy. And that's going to hurt your chances and hurt your credibility. So again, even if it's something like you went streaking at halftime of the high school football game, you're embarrassed, put it down. If you threw something at the teacher in high school and got suspended, you're embarrassed, put it down. Got in a fight. I don't care if it was just a shoving match in the cafeteria and you got suspended. Put it down. We don't want to be told something in the course of our background interview that we did not know about, or your credibility will be at stake. Ever fired from a job? If you were fired, you were fired. You weren't a budget cut. You weren't looking for another job. You were terminated. If we find out you were fired and you said you were a budget cut, there's a problem there. People get fired. You explain why you were fired and what the reason was, the criteria, when it was. Again, you could just explain it. The one important word for any firefighter candidate is integrity. You lie, you die. Make sure you are honest. If you are not honest, you will not be a viable candidate. Physical or verbal altercation applies the same way. Might be something minor, maybe something major. But we don't want to hear it from somebody else. We want to hear about it from you. And you want to be the one to tell us about it because that way we get your side of the story. There are a series of questions about your job, absences, written complaints at work, unsatisfactory reviews. Be honest, be truthful. If you need to explain it in more detail, do so. If you miss work due to drug or alcohol consumption, obviously that's an important statement. Tell the truth and explain it to your background investigator. As we get to the bottom of the next page, we're getting to, have you ever applied to any fire police agency? List every agency starting with the most recent and what the outcome or status was. So that's every agency. You may have to have a supplemental page with 500 agencies. Go do your research. Most of them will be application only. Some of them maybe you went through backgrounds. You'll discuss what happened. Some of them you may have been offered a job, but you turned it down or withdrew from the process. Whatever the situation is, you will explain it. But you need to put down every agency. If you had a background investigator, what their contact information is and their name. It may have been us, actually, but that's okay. You can put our name down. Military experience we have already addressed. Selective service, which you all should have registered for, or your DD-214, which will detail all of your military experience. If you were an honorable discharge, that's fine. If you were a dishonorable, it'll be on your DD-214, and you will explain why you were a dishonorable discharge. Don't let us find out from somebody else. Disciplinary actions in the military must be detailed. Finances, that's all your finances. We don't need a minute-by-minute detailing of how much you owe and how much you have in your pocket. You could generalize about what you make, maybe what your significant other makes, or wife or husband makes. We just want to know what your current situation is, and then you will see a litany of questions about your financial status. You have read any repossessions, you have read anything go to collections. So you will check off the applicable box and explain it if necessary. Everybody has debts these days. That's a way of the world. That's fine. Don't be ashamed of saying you're in debt. We just want to know that you are taking care of it. You're making the payments, you're in credit counseling, you're borrowing money from mom or dad, whatever to explain it. It's not a problem you have a debt. It's only a problem if you're not dealing with it. We do not want to hear an explanation that is, gee, I guess I better deal with that soon. Same thing applies to your taxes. There will be some tax questions. If you have not paid your taxes, catch up. If you're on a payment plan, explain it. If you have not filed, give the reason why, or make sure you get an extension. If it happened in the past, explain it. You need to explain everything. Police ever been called to your home for any reason? The dog was barking too loud. We had a party and there was a noise complaint. Maybe you called the police because there was an abandoned car in front of your house, or maybe something more significant. Make sure you fill that out. Have you or your spouse ever been referred to Child Protective Services? If it happened, you will detail it, explain the situation, provide paperwork. If you have any paperwork that could help us understand what happened. This may tie into, obviously, a former relationship, sometimes a current relationship, but usually a former relationship. But again, you could explain what happened in your own words. If you need to supplement that with paperwork, you do that. A temporary restraining order, or emergency protective order, if it happened, either you filed for it or somebody else filed against you, provide the paperwork or explain it. We need all the details on something like that, because that will set off red flags if we don't have a way of understanding what happened. The next several pages under legal are a whole series of potential wrongdoing, i.e. crimes that you may or may not have committed. I'm not going to read all of them. They pretty much cover every crime you could ever imagine. And you need to realize it says in the past 7 years or any time after you were first employed in public service. Okay? Possession of alcohol as a minor, don't forget it. Most of our candidates had a drink before they were of legal age. To finish up on the legal section of various criminal acts, you will notice the detail at the top says undetected acts. So you may easily assume, well, I did things, but I didn't get caught. Annoying phone calls when you were a juvenile. Yeah, plenty of kids have done that. You did it, but you weren't caught. Okay. Driving under the influence. You did it, but you weren't caught. Again, you can check yes and explain it to your background investigator. Is that a problem? Only a problem if we find it out and you didn't tell us. You went fishing without a license, but you weren't caught. You went hunting without a license, but you weren't caught. Okay. Not significant, really, probably, but we want to know about it. We, again, don't want to find anything out that surprises us when we initiate your background investigation. Take your time filling this out. Consult with mom or dad or significant other. Oh yeah, I forgot about that one, Mom, when I cheated on that test in college and didn't get caught. Under legal, next section, drug use. You got all the drugs listed. You will go through each one of those and you will detail if you used any of those drugs and when you used it. Marijuana is not a concern anymore unless you were younger than 21 years or it was years ago before it was legalized. Other than that, we're not too worried about marijuana. The other drugs I want you to detail. You were an athlete. They gave you greenies to help you perform because of your injuries. You'll tell us about that. If you have really never used any drug, you can check it off, but that better really be the case. We frequently get calls later on saying, oh, I forgot. I don't think you forgot. I think you neglected to put it down. So it better really be never. If you used one or more drugs, but under limited circumstances, experimental or whatever, that's what it says. You experimented. You did it one time. Okay, that's how you could detail it. Have you ever engaged in any of the activities below for drugs, narcotics or illegal substances? Sold, manufactured, purchased, furnished, cultivated, carried or held for another. And that applies for alcohol too. Did you buy baby sister alcohol? Did you buy your friends or carry their marijuana for them before it was legalized? Or maybe some other kind of drug. Make sure you read that section and represent it honestly and accurately. We end up talking to a friend or a relative who says, oh, I remember when Fred got that alcohol for us because he was 21 and we weren't. Oh, well, I assume Fred told me about that. Motor vehicle, self-explanatory. Your license, state of issue, your accidents, if you've had any, current liability or vehicles, even if you're using your parents. Again, we talked about that. Include those items. Has it ever been suspended or revoked? Again, tell us when and what the circumstances were. You will see a list for last 10 years of accidents. If you had an accident 20 years ago, I don't really care about it too much, unless it was something very significant that you want to detail for some reason. Otherwise, we're interested in accidents in the last 10 years, where it happened, what happened, date, injury, non-injury, was an agency involved in an investigation of that accident. Violation last 10 years, same thing. Speeding, driving without a license, maybe, whatever it might be. Nature of the violation, your month and year of it, and did you go to traffic school, pay the fine, whatever it might be. If you had more than 3, and you very well may have, that's fine. Detail it on a separate additional piece of paper. Concealed weapon, self-explanatory. If you've ever been refused to carry one, or if you have one, you'll tell us. You ever been associated at any time in your life with a criminal enterprise or a gang, you will tell us. Even if it was for something in high school, you hung around with the wrong people, you could detail it. You may be 35 years old now. You might think that's not important. It is to us. It's honesty. Tattoos, scars, or distinguishing marks, and their significance. As I mentioned early on, you're taking pictures of tattoos. Where they are on your body, you will detail, assuming it's an appropriate part of your body. And if it's not, you will detail it where it is. And again, what is the significance? Maybe your dog's paw print. Maybe your wife or husband or significant other's name or birth date, or a friend's date of birth or death because they were somebody close to you. That's fine. You just got to detail it. A cross, a biblical verse. Just explain what it is, where it is on your body. If it's something that is not commonly understood, that you may need to explain it. We don't want to assume anything. Explain it. You may, if it's not a butterfly or a bird or an animal or your name or your wife's name or your husband's name, you may need something that has to be explained. If it's in another language, translate it for us, please. Thank you. And then, of course, you will be signing the bottom of the page. And as we've done in every page, which I detailed at the beginning, you are initialing the corner of every page. Then you will see a blank page at the end, which I've referred to multiple times. Use that blank page and add another blank piece of paper the same size as this portfolio to explain anything. And when you do that, put the section of the PHS that refers to. If it's the section for DMV, you will write that section number and explain, because you had more than the 3 tickets and you want to explain it. And that's not parking citations. It's moving violations, by the way. That sums up the PHS pretty detailed fashion. So just to summarize again, if you're going for an in-person interview, 3 documents are required for that interview. Your notarized release, your thoroughly completed personal history statement, and the social media page filled out accurately and fully. Auto insurance, don't send your whole policy. Send the card showing you have a currently insured auto. One final thought. We frequently get calls about dress code for your intake interview. I will not answer that question. I expect you to know what the proper dress code is for this interview. And that will be the first step in how you will be evaluated. So use your judgment. If you are not doing an in-person interview, but you are doing a Zoom interview because of scheduling issues, or you're out of the area, or any other difficulties, for the Zoom interview, you will have already provided the personal history statement, those documents that were required that I mentioned already. The other documents you will probably be mailing. Do not email them. We have too many candidates, too many documents, and your background investigator, when you set up your interview, will instruct you on the mailing instructions, but do not, trying to think you're getting ahead of the situation, email 30 documents. Because if we have 50 people and 30 documents each, that will not be an easy situation for us to deal with. So again, the 3 vital documents, whether it's Zoom or in person, and the other things you'll be instructed how to provide. Make our job easy, increase your chances for success. This is the San Jose Fire Department. It's the big leagues. Good people aren't always selected. Doesn't mean you're a bad candidate, but it's very competitive. If you don't get picked the first time, you will keep trying. You want to not get picked for not a negative reason because you were lying or dishonest or something significantly negative in your life that you didn't detail. You want to just not have been picked because there were so many good candidates or they didn't take as many as they anticipated. And then you go through it again, and that's fine. But again, it makes our job very easy if you do it correctly. It also makes our job very easy if you give something outrageously false or misrepresented and you disqualify yourself. And if that's what happens, you hurt yourself for future applications also. So I can't stress that enough. Honest and integrity are key words in the mantra for being a firefighter applicant. Thank you.